Good evening, America. This is Sergeant Dave Matthews at gmail.com with the Remember the Fallen podcast on KLRNradio.net, in which every Thursday and Friday night I'll be voicing for our veterans into infinity. I'm back with vengeance after the survival instincts of an 8-ton rollover accident in the Pawan province of Afghanistan in 2004, where I lost my 19-year-old gunner, Brandon J. Rodman, who was sitting right next to me. Please Google his name to read the whole story. I emerged from a pile of hurt soldiers on Old Cabo Road and returned to the States with even a more enduring tale of perseverance. As I navigate through the riddled and trampled rapids of the VA system, I gain a new perspective that I will share with you with a fever of enthusiasm. To all patriots across the windswept fields of America, you see, one of us can be ran off, two of us can be disregarded, but a podcast audience, we are a movement. All right, here we are live at the Remember the Fallen YouTube studio in Seminole County, Florida, USA, on the Winter Springs Oviedo line. And I bring to you tonight a special fireside chat with Amvets on PTSD Awareness Day. Check out this new app, Objective Zero. All right, here it begins.
Welcome everyone to PTSD Awareness Day Fireside Chat. I'm here with two great experts, and for those of you that know me and don't know me, my name is Teresa Jackson. I am the current Chief Medical Executive of Amvets. I'm a true PTSD advocate, so this Fireside Chat is something I've been waiting for. I'm excited about to have these two experts really talk about the plight of veterans dealing with PTSD during this time. So at this point, I'm going to have my two guests introduce themselves. Again, we have Chris Mercado and we have Dr. Ingrid Herrera-Yee. That's here today with the Fireside Chat. So Chris, if you can get started first with the introduction, please.
Hi, yeah. Thanks, Teresa. I really appreciate that. My name is Chris Mercado. I am a co-founder and the Operations and Partnership Director with the Objective Zero Foundation. And we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization that's using technology to connect veterans, service members, military spouses, military caregivers, and dependents to a nationwide and truly global network of peer support using a mobile app to connect them through voice, video, or text message.
Wonderful, and I can't wait to talk to you about that because I love apps, particularly there's some type of new technology out there. So that's going to be really interesting to hear what your creation is and how it's going to help veterans. Dr. Ingrid Yee?
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. I am the founder of Military Spouse Behavioral Health Clinicians. So we have thousands of members, CONUS and OCONUS, who support our service members, veterans, and families with all their mental health concerns, PTSD, suicide prevention, depression, anxiety, really trying to support as military family members. We get it, you know, we're living it too. And so, you know, it's important that our veterans, our spouses, our military service members have someone who understands them. It can be trained, but it's our feeling at MSBHC that you can't beat having someone who's a veteran or who's a spouse or who's a service member or reservist or guard, someone who has lived the life and understands to be there and support our veterans and our service members and their families. I wear another hat too, my day job. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as a contractor for the Defense Suicide Prevention Office, and I helped with the very first numbers of suicide for our military families. So that's something I'm very passionate about as well.
Well, I thank you both for being here, and Dr. Yee, I thank you for being here today because a lot of times when you hear about PTSD, you think about just a veteran, right? No one talks about how it affects the spouse, no one talks about how it affects the entire family. So you being here today is going to allow us to have a deep conversation about what we can offer to the military family as a whole when someone is dealing with this crisis. So again, thank you both for being here today. We're just going to do some administrative stuff right now. For those of you who don't know, today is PTSD Awareness Day. and we're here to talk about the plight of veterans and family members who are dealing with PTSD. It's important that we talk about this topic, particularly now with COVID and everyone in their homes, and we got to be able to support our veterans and our veteran families. For those of you who come in late and don't get the information you need, please, 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 if you're in a crisis, reach out to the Veteran Crisis Line, and that number is 800-273-8255. So we're going to just jump into it, and again, this is just a conversation about PTSD on this very important day. And so, Chris, tell me, why do you think there's such a stigma around PTSD?
Well, so the military, I think, has got a really unique culture, right? And, it's a very, close-knit, tight bond. We're connected to a higher purpose, very, very meaningful relationships. But the culture of the military also has, this kind of very long-standing culture that almost encourages people not to seek help, right? And I can speak from my own experience, having served in the Army for over 20 years. We often look down on soldiers who, perhaps report to sick call or who go to behavioral health looking for help. And I think that culture is changing, and it's changing very rapidly, I think, in the last few years. But when I was a young soldier and an enlisted soldier, 20 years ago, if you went to sick call, you were oftentimes looked down upon, that you were shirking your duties and you were shirking your responsibilities. You weren't a contributing member of the team. Today, it's not really the case, but there's still some of that lingering effect of culture that's affecting that stigma against seeking help.
And I'm glad that you said that, because that's what happened to me. I was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, twice to Iraq and once to Afghanistan, and I came back knowing that I had it, but I didn't want to seek help because of that stigma of being weak, and you're not a team player. We're supposed to brush it off and get back to the line of duty and be okay getting back to the line of duty. And it took me many, many years in order to feel comfortable and confident to tell somebody my story and what I was dealing with. So it's interesting that you said that, the stigma is not as bad as it used to be. In what ways is it not as bad? Are people reporting more now? Are they comfortable with the title? How is it different?
So what I've observed is that senior leaders are actually much more public and, kind of out front with their own experiences, right? I've seen cases of senior leaders who said, hey, I went to behavioral health care to go deal with my own problems. They're kind of paving the way for, junior officers and junior NCOs and soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to go seek the care that they need. Because we invest a lot of time and money into training all of our service members, and we want them at their best. And so I really, kind of laud the military and senior leaders for taking that proactive step to break that stigma and to change that culture.
And let's take a twist on that, Ingrid. How has the family member or the military family member see the stigma of PTSD? What type of things is happening in the family unit when it comes to the stigma of PTSD?
I think it's really very much in line with what Chris was saying, that the families, they also, especially if they're actively serving, they're afraid to get help for their service member, get help for themselves as caregivers. If they're in that role, they don't want, and still is true today, they don't want it out there as much. Although I agree with Chris that there are a lot of leaders that are stepping up, they're sharing their stories. There are NCOs, first shirts, all of them, they're sharing their stories, and it makes an impact. Mm-hmm. But there's not enough of them yet. Mm-hmm. We need that more. The stigma is still there, but it's definitely much better than it was for sure. And for military families, there's a secondary PTSD. So the PTSD of the family member, because sadly sometimes with PTSD, there's anger issues in the family, or there's conflict, and again, they're very isolated in many situations, and so they have secondary trauma based on what's going on in their household. And so I always, when I speak to families, encourage them to talk about it. I mean, nothing's going to happen to their career. They're going to get help. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's going to be many people watching this saying, sure, right? And nothing's going to happen to my career. because I can say I worked maybe 7 years ago in at Joint Base Andrews, and I was on one of those other units where they, they're checking out the guys and sending them. I was on the dreaded, psych ward, the psych at Malcolm Grove. They knew the floor. They didn't want to go there, and when they were with me, they didn't want to talk. So, but from then to now, there's been a big change. We hear a lot more from my military spouse behavioral health clinicians, the psychologists and therapists and social workers that are in my organization. They tell me they're seeing a lot more families and a lot more service members talking about these issues and getting help. And for active duty service members, they have options that if they are still afraid of some sort of circumstance, they can talk to a chaplain, they can talk to a military family life counselor. There's people they can talk to where there's no record of getting any help, including the 800 number that you shared as well. So there's a lot of resources that weren't there before. They're now confidential and available for families, for veterans, for service members. And so for military families in particular, really, trying to navigate in the home, living with their service member who, they're supporting and want to see get well and understand that they've been through things that, I'm a military spouse. My husband's been combat deployed 4 times. So I know, and this is very personal to me as well as professional. And so for me, things were tough sometimes in our family, and it's okay to talk about that.
Yeah.
And and I got help for myself. If the service member doesn't want to get help right away, maybe by watching you get help and get better, they will too. It's really about really being open and honest with each other.
Yeah.
And about, talking to your spouse about how you're feeling and how you can help.
And I'm glad you said that because, I retired from the Air Force in 2013 as a Air Force nurse, and I was also at Andrews Air Force Base. I know Malcolm Grove. I know that base.
Floor.
And you're absolutely right. We did not want to get sent to that floor because we didn't know the repercussions of it. So a lot of the nurses hid in silence, and they kind of suffered in silence because of it. And I recall an incident where I walked into the locker room, our changing room, and a nurse was like, she was broken. She was she needed help, and she said that had no one stopped, and it was me that stopped to ask her if she was okay, that she was going to do something to herself when she got home. She was just that broken and didn't know where to go, what to do. And that goes to say that back then, 2005, 2006, even all the way up until I retired, we didn't feel comfortable enough to be able to share that information. So to know that there's a shift and there's a change since I left, that is amazing. That's outstanding. One of the things I do try and repeat in my social medias and things of that nature is I try to inspire veterans to be okay not being okay. And I say to them, it's okay to not be okay. We've seen some things. We've been through some things, family members as well. But until you become confident and honest with what you're dealing with and willing to disclose that, you're not going to be able to get the help that you need. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Ingrid. That's very important that the family member knows that, and particularly, like you said, Chris, that the veterans know that they can find help and talk about their situations.
Absolutely. There's so much pain in PTSD, so much misunderstanding, especially by the public who think that these are broken men and women, when that is not the truth. They have gone through so much, and this is just how it shows, and it's not weakness, it's strength. And so, just supporting them through it, PTSD is treatable. Mm-hmm. It's not, like we're going to live with this for the rest of my life. It is treatable. Yeah. And the first step is to ask for help.
Yeah.
Right. There's a stereotype at play, I think, that you brought up, which is that stereotype of the broken veteran, that, all service members go to war, they come back broken, and that they will never be able to contribute to their community or their society or to business ever again, that they'll never recover. When the reality is actually kind of the opposite. The overwhelming majority of service members who deploy to combat and return they go on to join their communities and be, wonderfully contributing members. They've got new skills that they learned while in the service. They have a wealth of leadership experience, and they have new knowledge that they've gained, having been exposed to new people, new cultures, new places, new faces, and they have nothing but wonderful things to bring back to their communities. So I think that there's a stereotype that's also at play that the public needs to be aware of, that we need to address and eliminate, and that's the stereotype of the broken veteran.
And what you're talking about is post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people come back stronger, like you said, leaders, and they want to make a difference, and they come back feeling empowered, and often go and help their fellow vets through, their own crises and their own, concerns with mental health or relationships, or, how many times do you see online in social networking, I've got you, brother, I don't even know who you are, but you're my brother, or you're my sister, I'm here. So there's nothing can beat that social support.
Yeah, it's that camaraderie that we know so well in the military, right? You have your battle buddy, you have somebody that you should be able to lean on, and that's very important. But I think the first thing that the veteran or the spouse that's dealing with this, they have to admit that they have something that they need help for. And until you admit that, you don't even have to put a diagnosis on it. But if you know you're not right and you need help, just go out there and get it, and don't be ashamed to do that. And I think a lot of veterans suffer in shame because they're supposed to be strong and they don't want to appear weak. With that being said, let's talk about the difference between how men and women in the military kind of deal with PTSD. And Chris, how do you see a difference, or do you see a difference in how men and women actually cope with PTSD?
Right. Well, obviously I can't speak from experience here. But what I will say is I think that we're learning, and I think that we're learning not just, in the military, but in nonprofit organizations, academia, for-profit organizations that are working in this space, the government. We're all learning that there is no one-size-fits-all solution to this, that we need to adopt public health approaches, and we need to provide curated and specialized resources for the different populations that we're serving. And I think female veterans are no exception to that, right?
Yeah.
They do experience different kinds of trauma than men do. And in some cases, and it's especially true for some, the experiences can actually be similar, but they require different resources to address it.
Correct, because one of the statistics that we know is that women veterans are twice as likely to have PTSD than men. And so to hear you say that, what type of resources do you think is out there, Ingrid, for women veterans?
There's a lot. I mean, they're very similar to the guys. Mostly I do with military families.
Yeah.
So, but the VA, I know we're all like, ugh, but it's always an option. And just your medical care provider, 1-800 number, talking to someone. But what the research tells us in terms of men and women is that women are more likely to seek help and men are less likely to seek help. But that's the biggest difference that I see in terms of gender differences in PTSD, not so much the way it manifests. There's a lot of similarities in terms of symptomatology and how they present, but in terms of those who seek help and those who don't, female veterans, military spouses, women in general, they tend to go and seek help much more often.
And why do you think that is?
I think that a lot of it is what Chris was saying. Our male veterans and service members, it's just really about being tough. Not that the women aren't, we're tough,
Okay.
We're very tough.
23 years tough, okay.
The reality that they have to keep it inside. Women, we're brought up to share, even if we do go to the military, we already come into the military feeling like, we can share things, we can talk about feelings. That's not necessarily always the case with our guys. And then once you experience combat or, you're in the military, and so much of it is about, you're just one of many people and everyone matters as a group, but as an individual, you just kind of, you're there and supporting the group, but it's not about the individual, it's about everybody. And
Exactly.
yeah, so so talking about themselves is not easy, and that's true actually even for guys and general population. They don't want to talk. They don't really believe in what I do.
Yeah. And I mean, that's important to know because, what works for a female veteran may not work for our male veteran. And that's important for the audience to know that it's not cookie cutter. Everybody doesn't have to fit in that box. And they tried to put me in that box. When I finally decided to go and seek help, they wanted me to be in that box where here's the same medications, here's the treatment option, here's the same strategy. I'm like, hold up, pump your brakes. I'm different. I don't need all those things. I want more of a holistic approach. And so let's go down that path. And it took a while for them to understand. Number one, I'm a nurse, and number two, I've treated people with PTSD, so I don't want those medications. I may need them, but I don't want to stay on them. And then for us to figure out a plan that worked for me, and thank God we were able to figure that out. And so that leads me into wanting to know more about Objective Zero, Chris. So tell me about your project or organization, what it is. I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So we launched Objective Zero as a mobile application in December of 2017. And it really began in the fall of 2014 when one of my friends and former comrades was struggling with his own transition out of the military. And I saw this playing out on social media. I didn't really know what I needed to do. I'm not a trained counselor at the time. I really didn't have a lot of experience, but I knew I needed to do something. So I reached out to him and I called him on the phone. And during that phone call, I asked him directly if he was thinking about hurting himself. And he said to me, he laughed and he said, Chris, if my weapon had been loaded last night, I wouldn't be on this call with you right now. So, I knew I needed to stay on the phone with him. I knew I needed to connect and just listen to him. And over the course of a 6-hour-long phone call, he really was able to kind of unpack some of the things that he was experiencing, some of the challenges he was having with the VA and navigating the system, kind of his fears and anxieties from having separated from something that he had known for the majority of his adult life. And at the end of that call, I asked him if he was still thinking about hurting himself. And he said, no, I feel better. I just needed someone to listen to me and who was not going to judge me, but just, be there for me. And what we realized is that, his experience is not unique. Many veterans are feeling the exact same thing that he's feeling, going through the exact same things that he was going through. And what we wanted to do was replicate that call kind of at scale. And so what we did is we leveraged mobile app technology and we created the Objective Zero mobile app, which connects at-risk, veterans and service members, their family members, even caregivers, to peer support. Someone who's been where they've been, seen what they've seen, done what they've done. And what's really unique is that a user can filter through our network of trained peer support ambassadors. So they can find someone of their same gender, or maybe who's been in the same campaigns that they've served in. So a Vietnam-era veteran could connect with another Vietnam-era veteran, or like me, an Iraq-era veteran could connect with someone who's been where I've been. And there's other filters too, like branch of service, proximity to where you're at, age, service academy, or commissioning source if you're a commissioned officer. We've got all kinds of filters built in there so that you can find your best possible and most meaningful match. And we wanted to eliminate all kinds of barriers to care, right? So the app is free to download. It's free to use. It's available on both Android and iOS by going to the Google Play or Apple App Store. And if you don't need the app because you don't think you have like stressors that you need to deal with, that's fine. Download the app and become a peer support ambassador, go through the training, and then be there to support someone else who might need it.
Wow, that's very interesting. So as you're talking, I'm thinking it's like a match. You're matching a peer support with a person that's in need. And I think that's incredible because when a person is at that point where they're going to harm themselves, that's usually the time where they're trying to reach out to somebody. And we have that little small window where we want to be able to connect with them. So having this app downloaded on your phone for free and being able to know that somebody is there and that you're not alone, I think that's incredible. What do you think, Ingrid?
Oh, I couldn't be happier to hear that this exists.
Yeah.
Because, I told you the other hat I wear is suicide prevention. And so I'm deep in the numbers all the time, and also evaluating programs in the DoD. And what works is peer support. Because one of the things that works is having a network, having someone to listen to you, to help you, to be there, not feel alone. Because the research tells us that it's within minutes that someone decides that, okay, I'm just going to take my own life. So it's, and sadly, the number one way that this happens, or in the majority of cases because of the lethality of it, is firearm. And there's no going back most of the time for that. I mean, if it's something else, there's, someone might rescue you, there's more chance of survival. So something like this becomes absolutely life-saving, because you need that, you need to know that even when you're absolutely feeling alone, scared, tired of life, that you can reach out and someone is going to be there.
Yeah.
But the scariest part is you reach out and no one is there.
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
So this, I'm thrilled to hear that this exists.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know it did.
I didn't either. That's why I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
somebody that's bringing from technology, because that's how, this new generation is really, that's what they're into right now, is
Yes.
the phones and apps and things of that nature. And
Constantly on their phones.
constantly on their phones. I mean, that's just the new thing that they're doing. So I'm glad to know that Chris has this technology for people to use it. And I'm also an assist trainer, which is for suicide prevention. And one of the things that I've been learning, we've been training first responders, we've been training firefighters in the community, is that when people decide they've had enough, they're going to do whatever they decide to do, it's not really the situation itself. They just want the pain to go away, right? They want whatever they're feeling just to go away, whatever that is. And so if we are able to capture them when they're feeling like, oh, somebody just take this away from me, with this app or any other resources out there, I mean, we're saving lives, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly right.
And so let's talk about what suggestions. Chris, I'll start with you. What suggestions would you give to someone that reaches out through your app or personally and say, yo, brother, I'm in Iraq, I'm in Afghanistan, and I'm suffering, and I just need help, and you immediately know it's a PTSD break or it's a PTSD crisis. What suggestion, how would you walk through that situation?
Right. I think that's a great question. And I think the answer to that, and I've actually taken many, many calls on the Objective Zero app, but I think the real answer is it depends. And it depends on the person that I'm speaking to and what they're going through. And I'm going to do my best to just listen and kind of draw out some of the things they're going through so that I can better understand and empathize with what they're going through. And I'm going to try and avoid making recommendations until I really feel like I understand what they're really going through and what's really kind of at the root cause of this particular moment. Now, I will say that the Objective Zero app is really intended to be an upstream approach to suicide prevention, right? There is absolutely a place for professionals and counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists. They are the experts at dealing with someone who's in crisis, right? And there are existing crisis hotlines, the Veterans Crisis Hotline, the National Suicide Prevention Line, and the experts are there for a reason. And by being upstream, what we're trying to do is put as many barriers between a service member or a veteran and that very final act of suicide, like Ingrid was mentioning. And so, as I'm speaking to someone, I'm going to try and elucidate what's really kind of at the root cause of it. And then I think by the end of the conversation, that's when I'll start making recommendations, right? And if I feel like they're in crisis, I'm going to direct them to a professional. If I think someone is imminently at risk of self-harm, they need to talk to someone even more qualified than me, and then one of our peer support ambassadors. But if I get the sense that this person's not imminently at risk of self-harm, they just need someone to talk to, they need a peer, then I'm the right resource for them. And then I'm going to start directing them to the resources. And what's neat about our app is we've built many of those resources directly into the app. So not only can you connect to someone, but we have tools, we have training, we have activities, and we have resources in our app. And that includes some of our partners, like Comeback Yoga, for example. We provide access to a veteran nonprofit based out of Denver that's providing trauma-informed yoga instruction for veterans.
Wow.
And so, I might encourage someone who says, I love to go for runs. I'm super stressed out. I might say, well, hey, break out your Nike Run Club app and go take yourself for a run. Come back, talk to me, and let's pick up the conversation. Or I might say, hey, have you tried yoga? We also have mindfulness and meditation directly built into the app. But for someone who maybe needs more help, and I think we need to connect them to a professional, we also have kind of a lifeline built into our app, which connects someone at the push of a button to either 911 or the Veterans Crisis Hotline. Or if they're looking for some other kind of connection, we also have Give an Hour built directly into our app, and they can connect directly to Give an Hour straight through the app.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like you have a one-stop shop there, Chris. You have everything at their fingertips, right? To make sure that they have the help that they need. So that's amazing. And Ingrid, let's talk about the support for the family member, right? So you have a veteran that comes back, and the wife, the kids, they realize, mom isn't, how she used to be, or dad, he's a little off. What support is out there? And the reason why I asked that is because when I came back, my twin daughters knew something, but they couldn't put their finger on it. They couldn't put their pulse on. Mommy is a little off. So let's talk about what support is out there for the family member.
Well, we have Military One Source that really is a huge support for our military families because they have access, I think it's to 12 free sessions. And, it can be like us here on video chat, or it could be a chat, it could be text, it could be, it really does meet you where you're at. Because not everybody can go get in a car, especially some of our younger enlisted families who don't have as many resources necessarily, don't want to go somewhere on base. So, being able to talk to someone over the phone, talk to someone over video, like Zoom, it's priceless. You could go in person too. Try to put that down. But that's a great resource, and it has made so many improvements over the years. They're adding more and more resources, even suicide prevention and postvention for those families who have lost someone to suicide. How to support them. So they have a lot of wonderful resources available. Amvets, you can connect to them through there too. There's all kinds of great information for families. But one of the things that I would say to anyone who's a peer or a friend or a family member outside of the family is or even families to each other, don't be afraid to ask that question about suicide. Because the research says asking or talking about suicide does not increase suicide. It does not. That is a myth. So talking about it actually allows them to really unload and discuss everything they've been holding inside for so long, which when things can get so heavy, they actually make that choice that's irreversible. So ask about it, like you all do, Chris, talk about it. That is suicide prevention, because you're talking about it, you're getting your feelings out, you're talking about how can I, saying to someone, how can you be there, how can you be there for me, how can I get through this horrible pain? I'm just tired. I don't want to do this anymore. And so keep them talking. If you talk about it, you can help prevent it.
And I think that's one of the reasons why our HEAL program, I actually manage our HEAL program for Amvets, and HEAL stands for Healthcare Evaluation, Advocacy, and Legislation. And we also created an online suicide prevention training program that we're updating, but we also became assist trainers. And the reason why we chose to be the assist trainers is because of that talking aspect. You get to sit there and you get to talk with someone that's feeling like, I'm taking my life, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore. And you really get to show them that they're valued, they're important, just in sitting there just listening, right? And not being afraid to ask that difficult question that no one wants to ask. Because if you get that answer, you got to do something, right? And a lot of people don't feel like, if I get that answer and I don't know what to do, then what do I do? So I think for us, Assist has been a game changer for us in the veterans that come to our HEAL program and come there with a crisis. We definitely connect the crisis hotline, to make sure we have them totally encapsulated with all the resources. but assist training really has that talking piece that you're talking about, Ingrid, which was truly a very a game changer for us. And I love that aspect because when you do that, that makes the person feel valued, important, even if you're the first person that's done it, compared to anybody else in their circle. So that's very important. But we're gonna go ahead, Ingrid. You have something?
And I just feel like this conversation really makes it clear that there's this connection between PTSD and suicide risk. So, just pointing that out, because I know we're talking about PTSD awareness and we're talking a lot about suicide, because I just want to make it clear there is a connection.
Absolutely.
So.
And we can talk about that. You're absolutely right. And I think people, when they see this video, they're like, oh, they're talking about, but you have to understand that connectivity, right?
Mm-hmm.
For those people who experience PTSD, the result of that can be suicide. Yeah. So that's how they connect. It's not that we're specifically talking about one thing. One thing will lead to the next. And we got to be able to be honest and have that conversation about both things, because they are very relatable. What do you think, Chris?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. It's something you said earlier. You were talking about how we're often seeing people who are trying to escape the pain. The pain of one thing is leading them to try and take a very final act. And there was an author, his name is David Foster Wallace, and he wrote about that. And he used kind of the analogy of a burning building and someone jumping out of a burning building to escape the flames.
Mm-hmm.
And his point was, it's not that they are suddenly not afraid of the fall and the act of suicide. It's that they're trying to escape the pain of the flames,
mm-hmm.
right? Mm-hmm. And so I think when we put it in those terms, we can understand it. And what Ingrid was saying is, they're connected, right? This idea of post-traumatic stress, or it could even be adverse childhood experiences mm-hmm. that inform, our adult traumas, in combat or in service, and we're trying to escape, those pains, the painful memories or the painful experiences, or the physical pain mm-hmm. that we experience from, say, a combat-related injury, mm-hmm. Which are sometimes, everlasting. And so I think you're both absolutely right. I think that we have to have honest conversations about it, and you can't really talk about one without the other, at least bringing it up.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Ingrid, did you want to add anything else?
No, I completely agree. And I think another risk factor, at least in the research that I've done and seen, is sadly when there is PTSD present, oftentimes families break up, relationships break up, and that's another big risk factor. So they're all interconnected. One affects the other. It goes on, and it's a circular, horrible thing. And so that's why it's so important to reach out and get help, because oftentimes these families break up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they can't sustain someone an environment where no one's getting treated.
Yeah. And
they're all, struggling with their own mental health concerns and stress and anxiety, and trying to keep the family together, trying to survive without getting outside help. And oftentimes what ends up happening is the family, falls apart. And then what happens, the pieces that fell apart, they're now alone and they're struggling on their own, and that's a bigger risk factor. So we really have to reach these families, like I said, where they're at, in their homes, and help them to understand that it's okay to get help, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to talk to someone about this. It's not gonna ruin your service member's career. Things aren't gonna blow up around, you're not gonna lose your home. You have to really know that everything's gonna be okay. You do need to take that step.
I would want us to dive into, some of the risk factors, or I know the signs and symptoms are different for everybody. No one's gonna have the same symptom as the other person. But if someone is sitting in their living room, they're watching us talk about PTSD, and they're trying to figure out, do I have it? Is this something that I'm suffering from? What would you guys say to that? If someone is sitting in their living room and they're like, man, I'm just not feeling like myself, but I'm not sure if I have PTSD. What would you say are some of those characteristics there, Chris?
Yeah, great question. So, what I've observed and what I've seen is, especially with modern warfare, we're living in an environment of persistent fear, danger, uncertainty, and combat traumas. And oftentimes that fear, that danger, that uncertainty, those combat traumas come home with us, right? Ingrid was talking about this earlier, and the impacts on the family. And so sometimes it'll be the family that sees it before the service member. I myself, I had 5 deployments. And, you know, I like to tell people that combat is an amplifier. Whatever you take into combat is likely going to be amplified. If you're a physically fit, mentally fit, resilient person, oftentimes you're going to come out of combat largely the same way you went into it. However, if you have relationship issues, financial issues, whatever it might be, whatever you took to combat, it's going to get amplified. And they're probably not going to resolve themselves. And you're going to come out of combat with a larger problem than you went into it with. And so as you're sitting at home, and people who are watching this, viewers who are watching this, I would say, you know, some of those signs and symptoms and things you might be thinking about are, you know, did you bring it home? Do you have kind of these memories? Do you have dreams? Do you have nightmares? Do you have heightened, you know, alertness or, you know, hyper alertness? You know, honestly, I still jump. I'm extremely excitable. In fact, there was a young man the other day who came up behind me and just said, "Hey, sir," and I jumped out of my skin, right? But I wasn't aware of this in my own self. It was actually my family who brought it to my attention, right? And it didn't impact me right away. At the end of my first deployment, I was good to go, right? I turned around, and 6 months after my first deployment, deployed again. And it was kind of a gradual breakdown for me. And, you know, every service member and veteran is going to have their own experience. But I'll tell you, by the end of my 5th deployment, I was highly agitated. I was excitable. I still had dreams about, you know, traumatic experiences that I had, and I thought this was normal, right? And perhaps for service members and veterans, it is kind of normal, but that doesn't mean it's something that's normal in society, right? We need to talk about it and deal with it. And I wasn't prepared to do so until it was, you know, my wife and my kids who started kind of subtly pointing things out. And all of a sudden, you know, with reflection and the benefit of hindsight, I was like, oh my goodness, these are classic signs.
Yeah. And the same thing for you, Ingrid. What would you say to a spouse or a family member that's sitting there and they're looking at dad or mom and be like, man, I just know something's not right, and how do I convince them to get help? And the reason why I asked that is because I had done a speaking engagement at a middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And my topic was, it's okay to not be okay, because I wanted to engage these students and say, you know, you may have a family member who may be experiencing PTSD. This is me, I have PTSD, and I'm up here talking to you guys to bring awareness to the topic. And at the end of my 3-hour, because each group, I had to do the same presentation. At the end of my presentation, the 8th grader came up to me and she said, I believe my father has PTSD. Why do you think that? And she was like a nurse. She was like, he got this, and he's excitable, he's irritable, and he doesn't sleep. I hear him pacing the floor. He's angry all the time. He was deployed 3 times. And I was like, whoa, who's taking care of this little girl that is seeing her father experience this? So Ingrid, talk to that little girl that is sitting there on that couch and she's watching her father kind of, you know, go downhill. Talk to her and tell her what she should be thinking about or how to help her father.
Sure. I mean, if I was talking to a small child about what they're seeing, the differences in their parent, I mean, the first thing I would say is it's not your fault, because that's the first thing kids do is blame themselves for changes in their environment and their loved ones, and, you know, reassure her that they didn't do anything wrong, that, you know, that their parent loves them, that they're going through something really difficult. And it's hard to understand because you're small, and, you know, it's hard to understand these kinds of medical things, but your dad or mom has been through a lot. You said dad, right? Dad's been through a lot, and so, you know, that he needs to get better, so he needs to see someone to get help, to get better. Just like when you have a stomach ache or a headache and a fever, and your parents take you to see the doctor. You know, there's something wrong, and your parent needs to go see a doctor so they can get better. But just remember that what you're seeing and what's happening is not your fault. And I would encourage the parents to get the child into some therapy as well. because you've got kids who are walking on eggshells, and are afraid to do anything wrong. Even if they don't do anything wrong, sometimes they catch it. So they get, worried and frightened, and they don't recognize the parent that was there before.
Yeah.
They started to experience symptoms of PTSD. So that's really hard for a child to wrap their head around, is how, how what's going on and how can I help? And that's a big burden for a child, to have to carry. Like, my parent is, I don't recognize them. They don't play with me anymore. He's always sad or angry or distant, or we can't go anywhere because he gets mad if there's too much of a crowd around. Too many people makes him anxious, and so now we can't go to Disney because he can't handle Disney, and that's not fair. And that's not fair. So they get angry, and then they feel bad that they get angry, the kids. So there's a lot to work through with our little guys, and for the parents that are watching this to know that your kids, they're feeling like they're responsible. For the most part, I work a lot with kids, and that's what the research says too. But I work a lot with kids with parents with PTSD or even post-vention suicide survivors, and that's the first to go to is, it's my fault. It's my fault, and what did I do, and how can I make it better? And then they start overdoing, trying to be the good girl or the good boy, and they don't see a change, so they think, I'm not good enough. And then it starts to play on their self-esteem, on their view of the world, and the way that they're going to act in relationships as they get older. So there's a lot to unpack there. So these kids, they need a lot of support.
And I thank you for that. And we're going to wrap up here, but before we go, I want you each to, give some closing remarks on this very important day today. And I think, I want you to just give those closing remarks to anyone that you think out there can benefit from what you guys are doing. If you have a call sign, if you're on Facebook, if you're on LinkedIn, if you have a website, let the viewers know who you are and where they can find you. Chris, you want to start first?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Teresa. First, let me thank you so much for letting me join this fireside chat. This was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot, right? Which is what we're all doing, is learning and growing and getting better. So I thank you for that. I think what I would share with anyone watching today, one final shout out is the simple act of listening can save lives. Ingrid said it many times, which is be there, right? All too often we hear that kind of sad story of, I didn't know he or she was struggling. I didn't see the signs. And oftentimes we're not going to put them all together. And my advice is, don't wait until you have all the pieces of that puzzle. Once you start seeing one or two of those pieces come together, that's the time to reach out and just connect and maintain those meaningful bonds, those meaningful connections with your friends, your fellow brothers and sisters. And take that time to be there, because you never know when that call might just be the call that saves someone's life. So the message is, the simple act of listening can save lives. And like I said, you can download the Objective Zero app on Google Play or Apple's App Store. You can find us on Facebook, Objective Zero Foundation. We're also on Twitter and Instagram. And I think we even recently created a TikTok, but I'm still trying to figure out what that one is. So, thanks again. Thanks so much for sharing your time. Ingrid, it was great to meet you, and I learned a lot just from listening to you, so thanks so much.
And Ingrid, closing remarks for you?
Absolutely. Likewise, I'm so honored to be here. It's wonderful to get the opportunity to talk to our veterans and service members, their families, their friends, their supporters out there about such important issues. And what's on my heart and mind right now is COVID-19 and our new environment where everyone is so isolated, which is what we've just been talking about. That's a bad thing, This is not helpful, especially for people who are struggling. So I really encourage for people to take stock and think about the people in your life who has dropped off. Who are you not hearing from anymore? Because it's not always obvious. Sometimes it's obvious and they're writing on Facebook, I can't do this anymore, then we know, but the majority aren't obvious like that. And remember, Facebook and all social media, it's like a highlight reel of people's lives. It's not reality.
Not reality at all.
Lives are perfect. No. So if you start seeing that your friends, your family, your peers your buddies, someone from your old unit is suddenly not online, not interacting like they used to, reach out and say, hey, I've missed you. What's going on? You want to talk? I know we can't, I can't go out and see you in this, COVID environment, but let's get online. Let's look face to face, like we're doing here, Zoom, or let's get on the phone. I'm here for you. But just being aware that this environment is making the triggers worse. It's making domestic violence is up. Suicide, we don't know yet, but we're trying to track that now. If that's been going up in this environment, I wouldn't be surprised if it is. So people are at risk. They're more isolated than ever. And because we're all isolated, you may not notice that some people that need help.
Yeah.
So please look around you in your life and say, okay, who's not here? Who is missing? Who used to be around is not anymore, and reach out. I mean, that's really what's been in my heart about, our current circumstance. And we're MSBHC, and we're a group of military and veteran spouses who are mental health professionals. And you can find us on Facebook. We have a group for any veteran or military spouses who want to join. We network. We provide peer support to each other, because we also go through things. Just because we're in the field doesn't mean we're not going through things as spouses. So we provide support. There is peer support in there, networking, jobs, employment, licensure issues, trainings, all kinds of things. And we're also on LinkedIn and Instagram. I've done TikTok, so.
I think we hit all of the social media outlets, just like Chris did, except for the TikTok. I would like to say thank you both for being here. Anytime I talk about a topic like this, PTSD is near and dear to my heart as an advocate, as the chief medical executive, and that's running a program, the HEAL program, that deals with veterans who are facing with PTSD and other crises. This is important to me to have this conversation. I appreciate you guys for being here, and I appreciate the work that you both are doing. And I hope the viewers learn something from this chat. We can chat forever. I can go on and on. We can go in so many different directions, but we wanted to make this very informative, conversational. And if anybody else who's watching, they want more information, we'll plug that into the chat. You'll have the numbers to the Veteran Suicide Hotline. You'll have access to all the information from Chris and Ingrid. So if you want to reach out to them, you'll have that at your fingertips. But again, thank you all for being here. We all are survivors, right? No matter what you're going through. And like Chris said, it's important that we remember we gotta be there. And it's okay to not be okay. Everyone have a great weekend. Be blessed. Be safe.
Hi, this is Sergeant Dave Matthews, back in the Remember the Fallen Revitalizing Live YouTube studio. And just what a great format Amvets did on that fireside chat on bringing awareness to PTSD Awareness Day. Let's talk about that app. Wow, I'm excited too, just like all the guests on the show. The Objective Zero app connects veterans, service members, their families, and caregivers to peer support via voice, video, and text messages. Users also get free access to wellness resources such as yoga, meditation sessions, and a catalog of mental health resources. I can't wait. I'm on the Facebook app page right now, so go to Objective Zero Foundation. I'm going to follow these guys. This is an incredible app. This is a game changer. Okay, so all right, it's getting 0:30 for the show. And before I relax and go into rack ops mode, go to Sergeant Dave Matthews at gmail.com. That's SGTDaveMatthews at gmail.com for suggestions for the next podcast content. And you can always comment me on my Twitter handle, Sergeant Dave at Heroic Memorials. And you can like my Facebook page. All one word now. Remember the Fallen. And until all our troops come back safe from Afghanistan, I will see you Thursday and Friday nights for my spin-off show, Resurrecting Lives. Now, go to klrn.radio.net, and you'll see, go to the 17th and 18th shows. You'll see both the Remember the Fallen and Revitalizing Lives, which is also Resurrecting Lives. and click on that and go ahead and share it. I need some more audience out there, okay? So share it for this former ground pounder. I would appreciate that. All right. Fall out. Pop. Smoke. Out.